evening. We'll call to order the meeting of the Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board of Thursday, October 20th, 2022. Present at the front table to my far left is Jessica Vitale, a voting member.
Good evening.
Next to Jessica is Ed McGargy, a voting member.
Hello.
To my immediate left, Ernie Angelos, our solicitor.
Good evening.
Far right, Margie Buchanan, Deputy Zoning. We'll go. At the front dia here, next to Margie, is Kelly Kirk, zoning officer. Jesse Poynton, a voting member.
Good evening.
Bill Rhodes, a voting member. And my name is Robert Kane, and I'm a voting member. Before we begin, Bill, you want to lead us in the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Ed, you want to move the minutes?
Yes, we have, Mr. Chairman, we have minutes that were distributed and some revisions were suggested and hopefully made. And I'd like to recommend that we approve the minutes from October 6th as revised.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are accepted. Our first continued case tonight is Z22-25, Michael and Teresa Brown, owners of 305 Windsor Park Lane, Havertown, PA, DC folio number 2209-0290900, who seek variance from provisions of section 182-207C51 to encroach into the required 30-foot front yard setback by 3 feet to construct a 10-foot by 26-foot covered porch and by 4 feet to extend an existing garage by 12 foot by 12 foot 6 inches. Property zone R5 and located in the first ward. Arlene, sorry. Michael, where are you? Come on up. And
Hello again.
You were sworn at the last hearing,
Yes, sir.
and
Okay, I provided another sketch to Marge during, 2 weeks ago. Did everybody get that sketch? After the input from the board members, I went back, looked at,
Wait, Mike.
I'm sorry.
you have to
I'll give it exhibit.
mark it. Yeah.
Okay.
So is this the sketch that you're
Yes, sir,
talking about?
yeah.
All right. Does everyone have it?
Yes.
And I think we're up to, the last exhibit was,
5, maybe?
did we mark A4? So we're up to 5, correct?
Okay.
So this will be A5. And how would you describe it, Michael?
I just,
A revised plot plan?
it's a revised layout, trying to abide by what the requests were from the board.
Okay.
And so what, after our last meeting, I guess I had an education here on what you're looking for. And what I did do, I went over, I pulled some lines. That drawing's a scale, by the way, 1/8 to the foot. So I pulled string lines from the neighbors, and where I came at 8 foot, I figured that was a base to start with, because I have the setback on the left-hand side of the property at 8 foot, 38 feet there. And when I pulled his string lines, I realized that, my intersection is 9.6. And that would keep in line the continuity, which was some of the feedback I got, that it's disrupting continuity of the neighborhood. The neighborhood has, half the properties have porches on it. I mean, this is not unusual. And then when you go past my property, that whole property sits on an arc, and it switches to split levels, so it's a whole completely different style of home. These are colonials. So trying to abide by continuity, and I'm trying to pull back minimum encroachment. So, I'd like to see 10 foot. I gave you, parameters there. If I go to 10, that scales back the porch to 2 foot setback and the garage to 3 foot. So I don't know if that's, if that's any better. I went through the 182 section to try to understand what, how you will issue a variance, and there's no major hardship. I mean, for me, it's quality of life to be able to put that garage in and have that front area to sit out on, as I mentioned before about all the noise out back there. I don't think it's hurting the neighborhood any. It's not anything different than what the other homes have there. And if you were going around that whole neighborhood, there's probably 25% of the homes that have that kind of porch sticking out. I think I came across another property that's even less than 30 feet. I brought to your attention 2 other properties that were obviously less than 30 feet. If needed, I'll go put a tape on their yard and measure it, but I didn't want to do that. So I guess I'd like to see, I mean, I'm not going to go 10 foot. I have an expansion joint at 9.8 actually. I wrote that up wrong there. 9.8 is where the concrete expansion joint is. If I decided to build there, I'd probably saw cut there and put the foundation in. So I guess 9.8 would be the number to work with. 10 foot, you know, it's a round number. I go to 10. So that's about all I can really offer. I try to, you know, take into consideration what some of the recommendations were. And, you know, when I pulled the neighbors out, I saw he lined up with me at 9.6. I thought, well, you know, I'm not sticking past him at all. Plus, again, all those homes are on a radius there.
Question? Jessica?
Have you confirmed that your car will fit into this new garage size that you're showing?
Yes, it's about 9 foot inside, but I'll gain the door buck there. And, you know, my truck won't fit, but my car will. We have a Highland there, so that'll fit in there easily.
I don't have any other questions right now.
Ed?
I don't know what you're showing here. I'm looking at the drawing, and I'm seeing a plan that marks 8 feet for your porch. So you don't want to do an 8-foot porch?
I worked from 8 foot, neighbor had an 8 foot porch. So I took his dimensions, pulled everything across, and that's when I saw that he was actually, if I intersected, I'm at 9.6.
So I'm confused. So the drawing shows a line that usually represents the line you want. And then you have a dotted line that shows a measurement from the neighbor's porch. And that's 1.6 feet, 6 inches, 1 foot, 6 inches away from your line.
Okay.
So what do you, so you don't want, the 8 foot is on there for some reason, but that's not what you're asking for. You're actually asking for a 9 foot, 6 inch porch?
9.6, 9.8 sort of joint is, I mean, somewhere in that vicinity. And I didn't really come to that conclusion until I pulled these lines. You know, I saw I had an 8 foot porch. I figured, okay, I'm okay with an 8. And when I pulled out here, I thought, well, you know, another 1.5 feet. And then I saw the expansion joint, it's at 9.8. If you need me to draw it up again, I'll draw it up to what you do.
No, I'm just trying to get it clarified on here. So the 8 foot is just a hypothetical to match the neighbor's porch, but that's not what you're asking for. You're actually asking for a porch that would be 9'6". Do you remember what you asked for last time?
Yes. I was going for a 12 foot garage and I was going for a 10 foot porch.
10-foot porch. So you're trying to cut back a couple inches, and the garage, you're cutting back 2 feet,
Yes.
2 inches.
Yeah.
Okay, and the enclosure, did you do any more thinking on the enclosure part of the porch that you would?
It's a question I had. I don't think I'll ever do it. So if it's a matter of being approved, I'll waive the close it in. If somebody else wants to close it in later, they'd have to come before you. If that helps any.
And you still plan to go out beyond your side of your existing building with your garage?
I would like to. I have plenty of room there. It's 8 foot. It's even less when I go back to the house. It's probably 8.4 now. So
you will not need to have a variance for the side yard setback, because you will have that even if you expand your garage.
I never, even initial proposal, it was 8 foot from the front of the garage. That's what I try to work back from.
Okay, I have no other questions.
Jesse?
Okay, let me see if I can help to clarify the record from what I heard from your answers so far in your testimony. Let's use 9'6" just as
Yes,
an
okay.
easier number. Okay. So on the right side of your house, you pulled a dimension of 37'6" to your existing house. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And then you would propose to go 9'6" out from that.
yes.
Okay. I'm going to do.
Um,
Okay, so that would put you at 28 feet, which would be 2 feet. You would need 2 feet of relief.
Yes.
Okay. So you're asking for now, your revised proposal, your current testimony is you're asking for 2 feet of relief in the front yard setback for the garage.
Yes,
Okay. And then nominally that, as we go across, it looks like it would be, as you go to the left side, the measurement is 38 feet, and you're asking for the 9'6". You would only need
1'6".
1'6" of relief on that side.
yes.
Okay. And nothing else about your previous testimony is different about the, what you propose, how you would build the porch or the
Yeah, I
garage?
probably would more think about it, if I keep it all the same distance, I'll come across and at the entrance, I'll just do a hip roof there, so it gives me an entrance. And I think that would look better than setting back the porch and keeping the garage out front. So I haven't done any more on that yet because I'm not sure what you allow me, so.
And if,
And he also agreed never to enclose the porch.
right. Would building a garage that was fully within the setback, that wouldn't work for you, right?
It's kind of like building a shed or a closet, I can build a 3x3 shed or I can build a 10x10 shed. I'm going to do the same work and I'm going to get more out of a 10x10 shed than a 3x3. I mean, I'm trying to take a practical approach to go to the effort of building this and get something out of it.
Understood. No other questions?
Bill? Okay, anything else you'd like to add, Mike?
No, sir?
Right, with that, we'll close the record on this case, and the decision will be read, before I do that, I have to do the litany. But a decision will be rendered either this evening, or if not this evening, at our next regularly scheduled meeting on November 3rd.
Okay.
But before I close the record officially, I have to ask, is there anyone present that received certified mail that was testified? Anyone present that received regular mail? Any other residents of Haverford Township? With that, we'll close the record on this case.
Okay, thanks again.
Have a good night. A4, I do. A4, that's cool. You need any other one? I don't see George Brosman in the audience. So. No, he's not coming.
I am the fill-in tonight for George Brosman. My name's Julie Bernstein. I'm a new attorney with Kaplan Stewart.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Julie Bernstein.
Okay. How you doing, Julie?
For you guys.
You can tell George we'd rather see you than him anyway. So I'll have to read the description. And while you do that, Julie, I'll read the description in. So our next case is Z22-26, My Uncle's Gift LLC, owner of 50 Cambridge Road, Haverford, PA, DC folio number 2204-0067200, who seeks variances from section 182-727B and C to permit portions of the proposed fence to be located within the front yard setback from the Tunbridge Road right-of-way. If required, a variance from section 182-702 to allow portions of the proposed fence to be installed at the corner of Tunbridge Road and Cambridge. Thank you. And any other relief deemed necessary to permit the proposed fence improvements. Properties are R1 and located in the 5th Ward. Julie, you already entered your appearance. You want to just go through the exhibit list and identify them for the record, Julie?
Sure. Good evening. As I just said, my name is Julie Bernstein, and I just handed out a series of exhibit packets. These have all been pre-marked and handed out to the board. Exhibit A1, we have an application to the zoning hearing board. Exhibit A2 is a letter that's authorizing my representation of the owner of the property. Exhibit A3 is the Haverford Township zoning map. A4 is an illustrative aerial of the property. A5 is an existing features plan. A6 is an illustrative or a series of illustrative photographs of the property. We have at A7 a fence sketch. At A8 are additional photographs of the proposed location for this fence at the corner of the property. And then finally at A9, I have photographs of similar fencing that's located in the neighborhood. And just to give you guys a brief overview of why I'm here tonight, I represent My Uncle's Gift LLC, care of Mr. Raymond Perrine. He's the applicant and owner of the property located at 50 Cambridge Road in Haverford Township. In connection with tonight's application requesting variance relief from certain provisions of the Haverford Township zoning ordinance, this property is located in the R1 low-density residential district.
Julie, can I interrupt you for
Yep.
1 second? So My
Sure.
Uncle's Gift LLC, that's the owner of the property?
That is the owner of the property.
And
If I point
Raymond
you,
Perrine is the managing member?
correct.
Perrine, P-E-R-R-I-N-E.
We have attached to the zoning application, I have it flagged, I think at the top of all of you got, they're tabbed, but I made a flag to make it easier to get to the deed. And that deed shows that My Uncle's Gift LLC is actually the owner of the property. It was, set up as a corporate entity or LLC entity to own the property. The principal is Raymond Perrine. He's also the resident that lives at this property with his wife. So this property, again, is located in this R1 low-density district. It's at the intersection of Cambridge and Tunbridge Roads, and it's improved with a single-family dwelling and related improvements. This is a corner lot, and so it has frontages on both Cambridge and Tunbridge Road. And although the property has a Cambridge Road address, it's completely oriented towards Tunbridge. The front of the house is on Tunbridge, and the driveway that gives it access to the house is located on Tunbridge Road. There's no additional kind of access point off of Cambridge. And then in front of the property is a water course that runs along Tunbridge on kind of an irregular path. My client's proposing to install this fence, or a fence, around the perimeter of this property, including in the front yard areas of the Cambridge Road and Tunbridge Road area to secure the corner property, which is particularly exposed because of these kind of two front yard accesses, and then also because they happen to have a nonverbal autistic grandchild who's gone outside, and with this kind of water feature in front, they want to make sure that there is a fence behind the water feature to protect the child from getting into that, water feature. As will be discussed, we're here because the proposed plan includes installing a portion of the fence, the portion that's on the Tunbridge Road side within that Tunbridge Road front yard setback area, which necessitates relief from sections 182-727B and C of the zoning ordinance. We're also going to be requesting relief tonight from section 182-702 of the zoning ordinance, which addresses visibility at intersections. The proposed fence is designed to kind of jog back around a really large tree that's existing at the corner of the property. And it's set up so that it's not going to interfere with visibility there, but it does in the way that it tracks around this tree. It cuts into that 75-foot site triangle ever so slightly. So I have with me tonight, unfortunately, the Perrines were unable to attend. They wanted to. They have a family member that was affected by Hurricane Ian, so they are down in Florida. But I have with me Ray Laughlin, who has been working on the fence plan for us, and so can fully describe what is going in here. As I just mentioned, at A1, we have the deed, which I've flagged. Then at A2 is the letter that's providing myself and Ray Laughlin with authority to discuss the proposal for you on My Uncle Gift's behalf. And so, Ray, can I have you come up here? We're going to first have you sworn in.
Yep. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and the capacity in which you appear this evening, please?
Raymond Laughlin, fence owner, fence company owner, installer. Laughlin.
You just mentioned you have a fence company, correct?
Yes,
What's your fence company called?
it is Main Street Fence.
And what is your job title?
I am the owner,
And how long have you owned this company for?
18 years.
And can you briefly describe your job duties as a fence installer?
Basically, I go out and inspect the properties, communicate with the customer what their ideals are, what'll work for the situation they're looking to achieve, go over the projected plans, make recommendations regarding the fence location, the types of fences, and prepare the plans.
And in connection with this particular fence proposal, what was your role?
I worked with the property owner and designated the proposed fence plan.
And you've performed similar tasks to this on other projects, correct?
Yes,
And because you worked with the owner on preparing this plan, you're pretty familiar with 50 Cambridge property as well.
yes, I've been out there multiple times.
And you've also seen the zoning hearing board application that was filed in this matter, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to have everyone turn to what we've pre-marked as Exhibit A3. Through. And this is a copy of the township zoning map. It's really hard to see, so we blew up the section where the particular property is on sheet 2 of Exhibit A3. If you look at this, can you identify where the property is located?
It's a property located in the Township R1 low-density residential district.
And now, turning to what we've marked as Exhibit,
Are you sure that 50 Cambridge Road is identified in the proper location on that page?
no, it is not. It moved. I apologize. That's what happens when it prints off. Okay, so I'm going to verbally explain. There is an arrow that points to a box, and it says that it's pointing to 50 Cambridge. If you moved over to the right one box, that would be along what's called Tunbridge Avenue. And if you cross Tunbridge Avenue, there's another box at the corner of Tunbridge and Cambridge Road at the corner. It would be,
Julie,
in the lower
do you have an
left.
extra copy of this with you?
Yes. Should I just write on it?
Just mark it and we'll add it as a base. Inside of the,
Sorry about that.
no worries.
They are all in red, so what he did point to is also in the R1 district.
And you only have to use one, if you just copy it, or circle it, or mark it somewhere, and make that your A10. And for the board, if you could just note on page 2 of Exhibit A3 that it's replaced by Exhibit A10. Cool. Thanks, Julie. Yes. So, just for the record, Exhibit A10 is replacing page 2 of Exhibit A3, which identifies the location, the tax map of 50 Cambridge. Cal, I'm gonna give you the original. Don't mess it up.
Apologies, now that we have that clarified, that the actual property is in R1. If everyone can turn to what we've pre-marked as Exhibit A4, it's at tab 4 in the exhibit packets. We've included an illustrative aerial of the property. Can you confirm that's what this is? And can you just describe what this shows?
So what it's showing is an aerial view of the dwelling that it faces, Turnbridge. There's a large existing driveway in the front of the property which provides the egress and ingress. to the property. The existing driveway also includes a large turnaround in front of the dwelling, and the rear and side of the properties, including what is technically the secondary frontage of Cambridge, are heavily vegetated.
And if we move to what's marked as Exhibit A5, can you identify this document for the board?
Yes, this is a copy of the existing features plan for 50 Cambridge Road dated April 6, 2022, and prepared by ASH Associates Incorporated.
And are you familiar with this plan?
Yes,
And did you utilize this plan to help create a sketch plan for the proposed fencing for this property?
yes.
And referring to this existing features plan, can you provide a brief overview of the property?
The property is approximately 1.16 acres and is improved with a single-family dwelling, detached dwelling. It also shows the existing dwellings on the property faces Turnbridge Road, and the driveway access to the property is from Turnbridge Road. The driveway access includes a large paved turnaround in the front of the home, which encroaches onto the front yard setback. Existing trees are planted in front of that portion of the driveway. The property is a corner lot having frontage on both Turnbridge and Cambridge Roads. Cambridge Road has a right-of-way width of 40 feet, while Turnbridge Road has a wider right-of-way of 50 feet. There are several areas of heavy vegetation on the property, including along the rear boundary of the property and the side yard near Turnbridge Road. This plan also shows that a water course runs through the property along Turnbridge Road, which goes through a culvert and under the driveway.
And this existing features plan also shows the location of the front yard setbacks, correct?
Yes.
Can you point out to the board where these are located in particular?
How do you do that?
Maybe I'll ask you questions because I don't have a pointer. So in front of the house, do you see the area that's the large turnaround for the driveway?
Yes.
And there is a line that runs through that turnaround, which is parallel to Tunbridge Road, correct?
Yes.
Is that the line that shows where the front yard setback
Yes.
belongs? And if you followed that line visibly up the page towards where Cambridge Road is, that line then jogs and turns to the left, correct?
Yes.
Is that the line that shows where the front yard setback is in front of Cambridge Road?
Yes.
And if you follow that line all the way to the left, it then again turns a corner and goes back down to the bottom of the page. Does that line depict the backyard, the rear yard setback
Yes.
for this property? And again, if you followed that line all the way down, you then could take a right and follow that along. Is that the line that's for the side yard setback?
Yes.
And that box shows what the building envelope is, correct?
Yes.
And that yard shows that the building and improvements basically take up the entire building envelope, correct?
Correct.
If we now turn to what we've marked as Exhibit A6, we've included a bunch of illustrative images of the property. Can you just quickly walk through what each one is? Sheet 1, can you describe what view this is showing?
So this is the front view of the property on Turnbridge.
And it doesn't totally follow this, so just look.
Oh, all right.
And the second sheet, Exhibit A6, is,
Yes, this is again another front view of the property on Turnbridge.
and does this show the water feature that kind of runs or
It does.
ambles along the front?
It does show the water feature, a little bit of a culvert, and then to the right is the bridge. To the left, it kind of goes into almost like a drain.
And the next sheet, we have a photo of the corner of the property, correct, which includes a large tree?
Yeah, that's a large evergreen. It has a bottom diameter of a little over 20 feet.
And then the next photograph that we have,
And
does,
this is right at that corner view on Cambridge, looking up towards the dwelling.
And I believe finally, this is our last photograph. What does this show?
This is about midway up that property line. From this point to the right, it's pretty heavily vegetated with, again, the other evergreens. That's the side.
And this is the property if you are standing in Cambridge Road, correct?
Yes.
And if you went up Cambridge Road towards Tunbridge, that would be where the stop sign is located in the photograph, correct?
Yes,
Is that a three-way stop sign at that intersection?
it is.
So now I'm going to have everyone turn to what's Exhibit A7. This has been pre-marked. Can you identify this for the board?
Yeah, this is a fence sketch prepared by Main Street Fence using ASH existing feature plan.
And can you describe for the board what's being proposed here?
So this is a basic fence-to-fence line that we had proposed to do. If you can see along the Turnbridge side, there is a double gate going over the driveway. It then runs up and kind of follows that creek up towards that corner where that tree is pretty significant.
And what size fence were you proposing there?
We're looking to do a 4-foot high.
And can you describe the fence a little bit? Is it going to be opaque or something else?
It's a 4-foot high black aluminum fence. It has a 3/4 inch picket and with a spacing in between of 3 inches, well, 3 and 11/16 inches to be exact. It's what we in the industry call a 75% opened picket fence. And it is 4-foot high, black with a flat top.
And
Is that what's in Exhibit A9? The pictures of all the fences?
Yeah,
Is that what they are?
yeah.
that, well, if we can skip over to A9 quickly, because A9, I believe, is a series of examples of fencing that is in the neighborhood. So some of the photographs show similar types of fencing to what's being proposed, correct?
It does. These are all 4-foot fences out in front of the properties. What Mr. Perrine is looking for has a flat top as opposed to the spike top. Again, I believe with his grandchild in mind.
Is that in any of these pictures?
If you would like to see the specific fence that they are looking at, I did bring with
Good.
specs. I just didn't mark it, but so I can hand it up to you guys. It's my understanding that they are looking at utilizing the UAF 200 flat top that's in this ultra aluminum fencing specifications page, or potentially the UAF 200 flush, correct?
Correct.
And if I circle those two, those would be the particular
We were discussing.
fences that were discussed. Okay. You guys want me to mark this as A11? I have two. So I'm going to switch back to the sketch fence plan, which we have as Exhibit A7. You mentioned that there would be a gate at the driveway. Do the doors of the gate swing into the property?
Yes.
And how far off of the edge of the street is this gate going to be?
I measured it out 25 feet
And-
off the edge of the property.
And is that enough space for a car to pull into the driveway and park in front of the gate without the car sticking out into the street?
Yes.
And then Since the fence kind of meanders because of this water feature, did you also measure what the furthest point of the fence will be from the cartway?
Yeah, the furthest point is kind of where it peaks between those two trees. There's a row of tree, and then the culvert kind of curves out towards the house, and that's 37 feet back from the edge of the road.
And, the owner mentioned to you that they have some safety concerns, which has precipitated their interest in having a fence installed, correct?
Yes.
And can you describe what those concerns were, just briefly?
Yeah. I gotta find out where I am here. So the owner has concerns of safety, mainly, I believe it was concerning their grandchild, who frequently visits and is autistic and nonverbal. They reasonably explained that they're worried about him going outside, will not respond if they call to him, and either end up in an accident on Cambridge or Turnbridge, or will get injured along the watercourse.
And are fences permitted in the R1 district?
They are. Yeah, solid fences are permitted along the rear and side property lines as per section 182-727.3, C3.
And are fences also permitted along secondary street frontages of a corner lot?
Yeah, section 182-727 also allows for the fence along the secondary street frontage and corner lot.
The reason we're here tonight is because section 182-727B prohibits the erection of fences, walls, retaining walls in the front yard of any lot, tract, or parcel of land in the township, correct?
Correct. We are seeking on the owner's behalf variances from section 182-727.B and section 182-727.C to permit portions of the proposed fence to be located within the front yard setback from Turnbridge Road right away.
And just to clarify, since the property is not oriented towards Cambridge despite its address, it is actually oriented towards Tunbridge, correct?
Correct. The dwelling and driveway are oriented towards Turnbridge. As a result, the yard adjacent to Turnbridge functions as the primary front yard, and the Cambridge frontage functions like a side yard in relation to the dwelling on the property.
It's actually Tunbridge, not Turnbridge.
I apologize.
I think we just covered this section.
Say Turnbridge.
Yeah, I think so.
No.
Yeah, the plan is wrong. Since section 182-727C allows a secondary street frontage of a corner lot to be fenced, the fencing that's proposed along Cambridge Road is permitted under the statute, correct?
That is correct.
And so the relief that we're here for tonight is regarding the fencing that's along Tunbridge Road, which functions as the property's front yard.
That is correct.
And are there unique physical circumstances of the property that preclude strict compliance with the requirements of section 182-727B and C of the zoning ordinance?
Yes, as shown in the existing features plan and the fence sketch plans, the existing dwelling and driveway occupies a significant portion of the permitted building envelope. In fact, the turnaround already projects it into the front yard. It would be impossible to install the fence outside the front yard setbacks without practically installing the fence through the driveway and turnaround. Additionally, the goal was to install the fence in a location that avoids disturbing any of the other existing features on the property, trees and watercourse. The fact that the property is a corner lot also leads to the necessity of this relief. The true front yard setbacks significantly limit the size, permissible building envelope, and push the house and improvements towards the back and the side yard. Usually most open space would be behind the home, This layout leaves most of the open space to the front and the side. The fence is permitted around the rear and the side yards where the open space normally is located to protect and secure this area. Due to this property layout, this type of protection and security is needed on the frontages, and all the more so because the open space abuts public streets. And placing the front yard fence closer to the edge of the front yard setback would foreclose the practical use of the land. This would also look strange and out of place in the neighborhood.
And in your opinion, the existing conditions, i.e. the 2 front yards, existing water course, and other features of the property present safety concerns, is that correct?
Yeah, yes. With the 2 street frontages that are associated public ways, privacy is more limited. The greater security concerns are presented to compare to conventional lots. The water course along Turnbridge also presents safety concerns to the occupants of the property.
And were these circumstances created by the applicant?
No, none of the features, including the multiple street frontage, the fact that the property is a corner lot, the width of the right-of-way measurements, the existing water course running through the front of the property, and the orientation and location of the existing dwellings, driveways, et cetera, were created by the applicant.
And is there any other relief that's going to be required to effectuate this plan?
Yes, the proposal is designed so the fence jogs back back at the corner around a large tree, so the fence will not impact the visibility of the corner. Relief from section 182.702 is needed to allow the fence to follow the natural path around the tree, and this calls for a portion of the fence to encroach upon the 75-foot site triangle.
And you recently went out to the property and set up cones to illustrate where the fence will be located as compared to the 75-foot site triangle and took photographs, correct?
Yes.
If you guys can turn to what we've pre-marked as Exhibit A8, are these the photographs that you took?
Yes.
Can you walk the board through these photographs to explain what is being proposed?
Yeah, so I went out there, I measured back to 75 feet of the line intersect between, we're now on Cambridge, and 75 feet and 75 feet down towards Tunbridge. And then I set up a line and put these cones so it was a little more visible. And that's what photograph A is. Photograph B is kind of the stakes show the whereabouts of my measurement from the existing fence in the back coming down. You can see there's an arrow pointing to where that fence would stop kind of around the base of that tree, and then it would come over 12 feet, go on that angle 12 feet, which is the 3rd cone, and then go back down.
So Rick, I'm a little confused.
Okay?
On Exhibit A8, the photo with the green arrow labeled B,
Yes.
do those flags depict where you propose to put the fence?
Yes.
And A sort of shows what the sightline requirement would be?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you look at the photograph that's marked B, the little short cones that show where that 75-foot site triangle line is, they're still in that photograph, correct?
Yes.
So if you compare the little short cones that are on the ground to where the cones on a stake are, you can see what portion of the fence would go into the sight line on this particular side, which is the view from Cambridge. If you turn to sheet 2, we have a similar series of photographs, correct?
Yes.
So photograph C shows little short cones, which are the line of the sight line, and then the taller cones, which you can actually a little bit see in C, and then more clearly potentially in D, that are on stakes. Those are the location of the proposed fence, correct?
Correct.
And okay. And did the natural features that are on the property impact where you decided to place this fence?
Oh, yeah, that tree itself is is at the intersection. It would be less distractive to have the fence follow that existing feature. The fence will go around behind the tree as to no further encroach upon that site triangle.
And will the fence impact visibility for motorists that are approaching from the intersection at Cambridge and Tunbridge in this location?
No, the fence is proposed to be placed so that it does not interfere with the visibility, as it should blend with the existing features. There is also a three-way stop sign at that intersection, so drivers will pull up, stop, be able to look both ways in front of the proposed fence location before turning, and the fence will be more noticeable and therefore potentially more distracting if it is pulled off and away from the existing natural features of the corner.
Will the proposed fencing comply with all other requirements of the applicable fence regulations?
Yes, the fence will not extend onto the street right away at Tunbridge or Cambridge. The proposed fencing will not split any boundary lines. The fence will comply with the 6-foot height limitation. The finished side of the fencing will face the street right away on Tunbridge and Cambridge.
And in your opinion, would the installation of this fence as proposed have a detrimental impact on the character of the neighborhood or district where the property is located?
No, the proposal will have no impact on the neighborhood. In fact, I drove around the neighborhood multiple times to look at other fencing in the neighborhood, as well as the setbacks. The proposed design will fit into the existing character of that neighborhood.
And we previously jumped over to Exhibit A9, and this is a series of photographs of neighboring properties, or properties that are in kind of the area and neighborhood where 50 Cambridge is located, correct, that also have front yard fences?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
these are examples of similar types of fences to what's being proposed here, correct?
Correct.
And did the style of these other fences impact the design that you're proposing here?
Did the style impact? Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes with the neighborhood. It's very similar to the neighbors, and the height, it wasn't like, it blended well with it.
And when we spoke with the property owner before coming in tonight, he mentioned that he had spoken with his immediate neighbor and that the neighbor across the street were okay with the proposal. Is that correct?
Yes,
So in your proposal, is this proposal consistent with the character of the neighborhood?
it is.
I have no further questions for you, but I'm sure the board does.
Well, I'm
All
sure,
right.
Can I ask Kelly a question?
sure.
Kelly, what is the actual primary frontage?
So interestingly, in R1 and R1A, there is no differentiation between the primary and secondary front yards. In other zoning districts, the primary front yard is where the larger of the two front yards is required on a corner property, and the secondary front yard is where the smaller of the two front yards is required. Generally, the primary front yard is directly adjacent to where the rear yard setback is provided in the case where there are, they're providing a primary frontage on both sides. In the case of R1 and R1A, there is no secondary front yard. It's, they're both essentially equal front yards.
How about if we take two, and then we'll come back? So we're gonna go 2-minute recess. Jeff, give him the chop in the end. As soon as the red light comes, all right. Okay, so is your case in chief done, Julie? So you're ready to go to the board for questions?
Yes.
Okay. Bill?
Hi, so I do have some questions. The unique physical conditions that you mentioned, which create an unnecessary hardship. We're talking about the scale and massing of the house and the square footage of the driveway create a hardship.
Correct, and the fact that it's this corner lot, so it has two setbacks, so the building envelope is, significantly smaller than on a different area, and that's basically completely encompassed by the existing home and improvements. So if you were to put a fence, outside of the front yard setback, it would bisect the driveway that's already there, and the idea of the fence itself is, to provide security for open space features. So also the fact that it's because of it's on a corner lot, besides the fact that obviously corner lots have two streets that present increased safety risks because of the two streets and cars pulling up and whatnot, it also pushes the house kind of back towards the corner. So normally you would play and hang out behind your home. Here you're gonna play and hang out in front of your home where the open space is. So naturally it makes sense to kind of fence that area in. And if you put this fence, even just right outside of the driveway, say you gave us an inch or whatever to put it right there, it would be completely impractical. You'd basically be creating a princess in a house with a moat and a fence right around the house, because it would be so close to the home itself that, the security that's needed for this is to have the fence kind of surround the open space features that are there. So to have, typically you would have the fence around the perimeter of your backyard and side yard, and here, they're looking for it to go around what's functioning on this type of property because of its existing features and where it's located. It sort of shifts, it almost flips the house. Does that make sense?
I understood everything you said. So the fence, you can go around the two side yards, and you can go around the rear yard, no problem. You're not looking for any variances. So we're really only focused on the front yard.
Correct.
So the suggestion that you're positing, I guess, is that because the house is set more or less in the middle of the property, but the driveway, which is not small and already encroaches on the front yard setback, should represent a hardship by which we should recognize the right or grant a variance to give you a front yard fence that's in the front yard setback.
Yes, because another home ostensibly would take up its entire building envelope. So if they put a fence, it would go around kind of the front yard area anyways, where there'd be open space and, someone could use that area. But here, that's just literally not possible because of the existing features that are there. So here, it's sort of requesting to have something that, a different layout or a more conventionally layout property would be permitted to have, set up a front yard fence in front of, open space.
Are they going to dedicate part of the front yard as open space? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, sorry, but it just is. If you look at the way the existing, where there's trees and where there aren't trees, the back of the yard is, I wouldn't say it's fully wooded, but there's a lot of trees and plantings. That's the layout, and so the front yard is kind of where there's more grassy areas. I can flip back to the photographs of the way the property is. They their goal is to be able to install the fence, utilize the property as it is, and not tear down any trees or anything of that nature.
In my mind, having a more wooded backyard and a more open front yard would be fairly typical, not a hardship.
But typically there would be, you can fence around the area that would be open, and that's not the case here. And the front yard setbacks on the two sides really kind of take away this building area. And another property still would be permitted to fence in that front yard, even if you're visualizing a house that has woods in back and a front yard in front, they most likely wouldn't have lost so much of the building envelope, that the house could have been a bit wider and they would have more space in front that wouldn't actually encroach into the actual setback. So what we're talking about, if you have, just a setback in front and not the same size. If you had a narrower side yard setback, you would have a much larger building envelope. And so the house wouldn't, need to encroach as far, and this is the house that's there, so it's, it's already taking up the whole thing. There's nothing that, they're not gonna tear that all down, but it would provide for a way that you could have, a front yard and a fence around an open front yard in a different scenario, because the building envelope would be, would provide for a much wider space in which you could put your home, instead of having it kind of fit within a, sort of smaller box.
So I do understand that what you've described represents some unique characteristics of this property. I'm just not sure I've heard the hardship yet. So from a safety point of view, which is mentioned in your, I guess, brief in support of the application, I heard in the testimony previously, one, I guess, although it wasn't mentioned, but suggested that there's a traffic safety concern. Is that fair?
Yes, I think a corner lot for sure presents, more of a traffic concern than a standard lot. There's two roads, there's cars that are moving up to that area. And then also for safety that you just mentioned, which would be, we do view as a hardship, is this water feature that's in front of the property. Most properties don't have something like that. So it makes it more concerning that you would want a fence to create security and protection from that water feature that wouldn't exist on a different type of property. So if you would only permit, the side and back to be fenced and not the front to be fenced here, because you cannot fence the front on this property without bisecting things that are already in place, you then are leaving this property open to what is, a feature that someone could easily, potentially fall into. You could walk out the front and there could be an accident that happens on this, kind of meandering water feature.
And the creek that we're talking about here runs quite a bit of distance along Tunbridge Road. Have you ever heard of anyone falling into the creek, whether it crosses under Tunbridge and comes out on the other side near Ardmore, or further up near the intersection with Exeter and Andover?
I personally don't know of any situations like that, but there are other fenced-in properties along Tunbridge. I'm not sure if it's because of that or not, I can't tell you, but this is not the only fenced, or there are other properties that are fenced on Tunbridge, and potentially it is because of that, water feature.
And I'll come back to other properties. You mentioned that the neighbors across the street are supportive. Are we talking about the neighbor directly across Tunbridge?
Correct, directly across Tunbridge, and the neighbor, I believe there's only really one real neighbor adjacent to him.
So the neighbor across Tunbridge, who's come in for variances also, I believe, for their accessory buildings in the backyard. They don't have a fence in their front yard, do they?
I don't believe they do.
And so where is the house that, and either one of you, you testified that you had driven around the neighborhood. So where is the nearest estate fence on Tunbridge Road?
On his side of Tunbridge?
Either side.
On the other side, it's soon, Tunbridge crosses over, I think it's College Ave, and circles around.
So that's a different road. That's Tunbridge Circle, okay? And I was gonna ask you, on Exhibit A9, the house with the white estate fence, is that from Tunbridge Circle?
Yes,
Yeah, okay. So that's not Tunbridge Road.
okay.
And then the other properties on A9, which you've described as the corner of Taylor Lane and Executor Road, which I think you meant Exeter Road, that those properties, in fact, are not on Tunbridge Road.
No.
Right. And I'm struggling to think about a house on Tunbridge Road that has created privacy or has a fence. Almost everyone landscapes their front yard to create the privacy factor that I think is part of the desire of the applicant. Privacy has been mentioned in the application.
Correct, that's one factor, but I don't think that that's the only or the main. I think that also security is really the main concern over privacy.
So we're trying, you had testified that you thought this wouldn't change the character of the neighborhood, but can you identify another house on Tunbridge Road that has an estate fence?
No, not right now. On Tunbridge Road itself,
Yep. You mentioned that the traffic safety, have you've been on Tunbridge Road, you've been on Cambridge Road. Do you notice, what kind of volume of vehicle traffic did you experience on that road? On either of those?
I would say at like normal residential traffic, it's not a highly traveled road. It's definitely, the stop signs need it. There is, every time I've been out there, I've been past probably 4 or 5 times in the short time I've been out there, so it's traveled. People are coming and going. It's not like they're speeding, but it tends to be a bit of a rolling stop sign, if I may. But probably because of the familiarity of the people driving by, but that's just,
Did you ever notice people walking on that road?
yes.
Walking pets? It's in your experience, does it seem to have a high level of people walking on the street?
I would say normal, I wouldn't say high, just.
Normal.
yeah,
No
like-
sidewalk, so people walk in the roadway, correct?
Yes.
So you mentioned this in the brief. The statement on page 5 was that putting the fence where it would be permitted by right would effectively preclude the practical use of the land on the other side of the fence. So what would have been the practical use that you otherwise would have had? What is the precluded practical use? I'm not sure what it is.
Hold on, let me double check. I think this was, I personally did not write this, but I read this to mean that if you were to put the fence like across the road, it's going to impact and destroy the use of that driveway turnaround. You would have a fence through it. And then also, if the practical use of the fence is to secure the yard from the water area, you would want this, you would be basically fencing the users of the property from the use of the front yard. You'd be fencing them in. And the practical use of the property is to allow them to be able to use this open space. And so if the concern is about safety, you want to fence off the water feature, but still allow for them to be able to use the property. And again, if you put the fence right there, right through that drive, then you're destroying the ability to kind of turn around your vehicle right there. And then even if you stick it right outside of that, it's still not giving you the fenced-in security of, that you would look for if you're fencing in. If you want to fully fence in a property, you can't leave one side open. And if you then want to use the property that's inside of the fence to secure yourself from what's going on outside. So it just becomes really impractical it makes that area unusable.
Well, and so, yeah, so I'm concerned at the idea that the driveway, which seems to have been built into the front yard setback, becomes a basis by which you can earn a variance as a reason to find for a variance. Because that potentially opens the door for everyone who's got a driveway on their front yard, which is most people. And you've got an existing driveway that encroaches. And so all of a sudden, that's a reason to give variances on front yard fences. I'm not sure that we want to go down that road as the basis to grant it. Because I worry about the precedent. I realize these cases don't necessarily carry precedential value, but It's televised, people listen to these cases, and they hear that. I think that people should be aware that a driveway that encroaches in the front yard setback may be an existing nonconformity, but it shouldn't be the basis for further variances.
I think that that's, I understand your concern that the driveway was something that, potentially was created, but it's not just really the driveway, it's the shape of the building envelope because of the setbacks, because this is a corner lot. That wouldn't be true of a different property. Again, as I mentioned, if you didn't have a corner lot, you wouldn't have the two 50-foot setbacks that really take away so much of the usable area that you can actually build on. And so it's not, just the driveway, it's like the whole, if you're going to put, a home or dwelling that's reasonably sized for this property, you're stuck with a very small envelope. And so that was fully built on. And because that was used, it's basically, because it's a corner, you're then losing the opportunity to have this front fence, which does give you it gives you real security, particularly when there's a waterway at the front of the property. And, I do understand that you're trying to, you're saying that this is, a residential area, so it's not, this isn't a big, crazy, busy, wild intersection where cars are probably zooming. I understand that, but there still are, accidents that do occur, regularly in, residential areas in various places where, children do walk into the street and get hit. And so if you have a property, you want to make sure that children are always going to be able to use the property. And at a corner lot, there really is more traffic. It's, it's kind of an intersection where people from, I understand that you're, suggesting Turnbridge Road is just the one part of the neighborhood, but this is kind of a, meandering neighborhood, and cars are going to come in from different points to get to the various parts of that neighborhood. They're going to all cross in this one particular spot. Has a three-way stop because it's a bit busier than other, areas in that neighborhood, that it obviously compels the need for three-way stop sign, not just like one stop. They wanted three ways because there is, there's more traffic there than necessarily in other portions of that neighborhood. So this is this isn't, I think a lot of corner lots will have issues that are greater than a standard lot that present some of these problems. They create this building envelope problem that we have here, but we're now also a particular corner that's at an intersection that necessitated a three-way stop sign that people roll through. So it's not necessarily perfectly followed. And then there's also the water feature. So the water feature, most corner lots aren't going to also have that. So it's multiple different things that are going to present, security concerns for that home. And again, they're not looking to put in an opaque fence. They're looking to put something that you would be able to see through. It would be allowed on three sides anyways. You can see through it. It's not a white picket fence that's going to blockade the home. You'll still be able to see the home from a distance, but it provides some level of, protection. And, people are going to have to come up to, a gate to enter the property, which, is helpful for homeowners that, if you're away and you have this corner lot and you're not there and it looks empty, this provides a lot of security. Whereas if it wasn't a corner lot and it was in the middle of the street, there'd be, two neighbors on either side that would know what was going on. But here, this is a larger property, it's a corner. It might just look vacant and a little bit more attractive, and especially, or it could be attractive for other reasons. There's a water feature people might want to go on. There's various things, but if it has a fence, people are just gonna move past. And
So the house stood vacant, I believe, for quite a while. Were there incidents of vandalism or trespass during that time?
I don't know about specific ones, but we all know the news and we've all heard what's been going on kind of everywhere, that there's been kind of an increase of safety concerns, since COVID and whatnot. I think that, And I don't think that's like, recent or necessarily perfectly particular, but I don't know that something happened now, but you do hear a lot of, increased security concerns and safety concerns. There has been an increase in crime nationwide. I mean, it's all over the news. So, and again, they're not looking to put something in that, I know that you're, Turnbridge Road and Turnbridge Circle, you're making, you're distinguishing, but this whole, to me, this neighborhood, to me, feels like it's a whole neighborhood when you drive through it and you meander around these roads. There are a lot of other homes that have, these similar types of fences. Again, you can see through it. They're not looking for something opaque. So it's going to have this, it's not going to create this like, oh, we're, walling off and fortressing our house. And that's also why that they wouldn't want it right, up against this driveway, because the idea is to have the home look, friendly, inviting, have open, space in front, have, the landscaping they have that like looks nice and, fits in with all of their neighbors. So it's not, also why, they kind of want it to, track the natural feature, because it will, it will blend in, it won't be quite as noticeable, but it's enough of a, security, please stay out, but then also the protection from this particular water feature on the property, while still giving them the opportunity to use their space.
Have they looked at the idea of following the characteristic of the neighborhood and landscaping with box hedges or anything, the front yard, the way most people on Tunbridge Road seem to have done?
I mean, I think that doesn't then address the safety concerns of that water feature, because a box hedge doesn't keep someone out. Well, maybe if it's fully box hedged, I guess I hear what you're saying. We certainly, I don't have the owners here with me, but I could get them on the phone and see if you want to give me a few minutes.
You can testify whether you know whether they've proposed or considered that. I don't know. I'm just asking, since most of the houses that do, the neighbor directly across the street has no privacy, landscaping or anything separating his house from the street. His house is much closer to the street. So he might have had even higher interest. But the other houses along Tunbridge, including the one directly across Cambridge, which has tall plantings, trees and large bushes, much higher than head height, all the way around the inside corner of Tunbridge and Cambridge. So they have done privacy through landscaping. And I would suggest you look, and that people are not using fencing on their front yards in that area. Where you do see it is on Ardmore Avenue and College Avenue, which is much more heavily trafficked roads, state roads. And, there may be, because of the speed of the vehicles on those roads, a good reason for that. But the Tunbridge, Exeter, Andover, Taylor, Harvest neighborhood, there are very few estate fences. And you have photos of one from Taylor and Exeter. But it seems to me that this would be a precedent setter for Tunbridge Road.
Well, I think in some ways it wouldn't, because again, I think this is a big corner. This is a major corner. And so it wouldn't set a precedent for, any other home doesn't have a corner, doesn't have the decreased building envelope, and doesn't have these types of, concerns because of, all of this access to roadway combined with the water feature. That wouldn't be all of the other homes.
Right. But the house directly across Cambridge, along Tunbridge also, that property, which has the same water course through it, is fully landscaped all the way around the corner.
But they're also not a corner lot, right? The one across the street is, so they didn't have.
They're on the same corner.
Oh,
just on the inside of it, right?
Oh, I was picturing a
But
different home.
His immediate neighbor does.
His immediate neighbor in which direction?
So if you're talking about the property on Cambridge, the neighbor on the corner,
That has
he's not.
that has the water feature, right? The pond.
That has the 10-foot high hedging.
Yeah.
But the neighbor right next to him has fencing out in front.
On Tunbridge,
on Cambridge.
on Cambridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And they came to us for a variance, I believe it's the same house, not that long ago. And, you know, we looked at their location and they pulled that fence back too. So, but we're talking frontage on Tunbridge here.
okay.
Because you can put the fence on Cambridge. It's a side yard considered, I think.
And is there something particular in terms of pulling it back that you guys would be comfortable with? Is there, you're just saying no fence, because here it's not, again, it's not just a privacy thing, it's a security and safety thing. And I do fully understand that you can't take into account their one child that they're concerned about, but that is a common, that's going to be true of anyone with a family that has this particular concern here in terms of exiting, they're going to go out into the front, and that they could go, down into this kind of water feature. And I mean, I do see what you're saying, that really opaque hedges, but really opaque hedges is going to change the feature of the neighborhood. But very opaque hedges also, they don't always keep out everything, in terms of safety. It really isn't the same. That's why, the fence itself isn't opaque either, but it does make a really big difference in terms of, people's ability to get in and out of this area, as compared to, just natural features. There is a difference between, how you can get around or through,
A
just
4-foot
wood.
high fence. Okay, and if we were willing to consider a variance, would the applicant be willing to consider having that fence pulled back, sort of splitting the difference between the water course and the near edge of the driveway that already encroaches? In other words, you've
I
drawn
just
the
wanna-
fence
okay.
hard along the water course,
Okay.
and yet the proper place for it would be hard along the driveway, right? And so you're asking for maximum relief right up to the inside edge of the water course. But if we were to move that fence back into sort of halfway, let's say, between the water course and the driveway,
I mean, I think that our initial, but if you're inclined and want us to go back and, relook at the plan, I would consider continuing this, but before even going down that road right now, do want to explain why we did talk about that, what you're saying here. And I'm not saying they won't reconsider things, but again, it sort of is the practicality of when you installed it, and also thinking about, what would kind of look nice in the neighborhood. And I know that's, these are all sort of varying factors, since this is just a dimensional variance versus a use variance, and they want to use their property. So again, if they put it in the middle, if you look on the plan, there's kind of the driveway turnaround in front of the house, and then there's trees. So they don't want to pull down the trees. So do you put the fence, you try to put the fence, I guess, right outside of those trees, and then you're splitting and bisecting the area that they use. And so then it kind of gets to the practicality of the front yard, and then again, having it go along with the water feature would just be, a bit more graceful in the neighborhood was, the idea, versus having just a hard fence right high up on the property that looks like there's a balance between being like, they want security and privacy. They want to make sure that people don't enter if no one's on the property. They want to provide safety and protection features for the residents and children that use the property. And they want to take into account their neighbors, so that just was, pushing it along this kind of natural line, even though, yes, I see what you're saying, they're asking for more space. It would just, go along with the neighborhood more and be less, potentially jarring looking versus, if you pushed it further up on the road or further up on the lawn. That was kind of, they considered it, but it was, they want to use that practical space. They want to be able to use their property open space. They wanted to take into account the existing trees, and they also wanted to take into account all their neighbors,
Right, so I understand that there's lots of things that they want, right? And that's generally not a basis for a variance, right? I do want to put on the record that the question about this three-way stop sign, does the homeowners really have concerns about that intersection from a safety point of view?
I think in terms of their child that's on the property, yes.
So it's really their front yard, and so understand, but I'm wondering, traffic has been mentioned, and I find it hard to actually accept the traffic concern. I think it's dubious that that's a three-way stop sign, but even if it were necessary, the neighbor across the street has a tree, a bush tree, it's like a large Japanese maple or whatever, that so encroaches, you can see it on the picture on A6, the first photo, behind the the light post, that big low tree encroaches into the right-of-way and actually blocks the view of the stop sign as you approach that intersection. Now, before that picture, go back one more, keep going, that one. See the light post on the right side of the road?
Yes.
You see the big tree behind it that encroaches right onto the edge of the road, of the cartway? Mm-hmm. That actually blocks the view of the stop sign as you approach that. So I would have thought if people really were concerned about traffic safety, that something would have been done to prune that back so people can see that stop sign. What happens is people come up to that intersection. I don't know that they roll through it unless they didn't see the stop sign until it was too late.
Well, so that's also what I'm getting at. So I don't think it's about, they're saying they want to change in the traffic. I'm saying that this contributes to why they would want a fence for people on their property. Okay. Is that, that shows that people are going to be driving by. They might miss a stop sign, which again, that could then be trimmed back. But this isn't a completely, this is an intersection versus, if you were kind of in a gridded neighborhood and you were halfway down this block and there's just one, there isn't a lot of traffic because only the cars that are going to your particular street go on that street. This is, again, it's kind of a meandering neighborhood. That's a three-way stop sign. So there's more traffic. There is the large space heading up to this corner. And so it's not about wanting to change the traffic. I think, maybe that was just one word but the concern is about the people that they have on their property, ending up out into, these two streetways on the corner, that they want to make sure that it's fenced in and safe.
So the 75 degree sight line?
Yeah,
right?
75%.
75, right. This intersection already has some occlusions of sightlines, including the neighbor's tree across the street and their own tree, which sits on the inside corner of that intersection, as well as the neighbors across Cambridge, which have landscaped right up to the edge of the road. So I'm not sure why it makes sense to curve that fence around the tree rather than just comply with the 75-foot. So your small cone line that you drew seems to be a safer approach than running the fence around the tree.
So I'll explain to you why they did this, and then I have a follow-up to that. But they felt that, again, having it kind of track the tree that already, encroaches would be less distractive than having, a fence and then space and then tree, that if it just kind of, your eye would sort of just follow the tree and the fence and it wouldn't be that noticeable. That was the reasoning. It was that, the idea was that even though it was going in, was that, it seemed like it was less visibly disruptive. But I do have authority if you guys are, really concerned about, the few feet that it's coming in onto that they can cut it back. They can redesign this to have it go on a corner if that's a particular concern.
Okay.
We talked about that.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for now. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Familiar with the area?
I am.
Jesse?
So my questions are about, so I noticed on the application that the owner's address is in Naples, Florida. That's their primary residence?
I'm not sure if there's, it's, which one is technically the primary. I do know that they split their time between the two addresses.
Okay,
So
that's
I
what-
don't know which one's primary and which one's secondary, but they go back and forth between both.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess I would rephrase my question as to how much time are they at this property? So at 50 Cambridge,
I think it varies. I'm not sure if it's perfectly 50-50 or
so it's
how much it is.
approximately half
It's-
the year?
I think approximately.
Okay, and you
I
mentioned,
think that they might be snowbirds.
okay, and you mentioned a grandchild that is sometimes on the property. Does the grandchild live on the property when they're here, or does the child just visit?
I don't know if I don't believe the child lives there full-time with them, but I think I am sure that the child spends a significant amount of time with them, and that they've had issues where the child has run out the front door, and because he's nonverbal, he's run forward and down into the street or towards the street, and it's incredibly concerning for them. They did express that this is something that happens.
Understood. And are there any other children that visit the property when they're on property?
I believe there are other ones. I think they have a number of kids, right?
Yeah, I
And-
know they have a younger
and-
child as well. Grandchild, I guess.
They have other grandchildren too?
Yeah.
Okay. And I also noticed that it's under an LLC, but they don't rent the property in any way. They're the only ones that use the property,
Correct.
and they don't run like a business out of the property?
No, they do not.
Okay, no other questions?
Ed?
The question I have, you keep referring to as water feature, but it's actually waters of the Commonwealth. It's a stream. I don't know that your plan doesn't show a floodplain or a floodway. I'm kind of concerned about the fence being placed in the floodway and whether or not it will need a permit.
It is not a floodplain, and I did close my case in chief, but I did bring with me, and you can choose to accept it or not if you want, but a map that shows that it's outside. It's outside of the floodplain. Do you guys want this marked, or do you just want to see it? It's not a floodplain area, even though there is this water
Well, every
feature.
stream has a floodplain. It's just not a delineated floodplain. FEMA.
No, and if you look, actually, without even looking at this, if you go to the existing features plan, which was, I should be looking at my falling apart plans. It's very, very tiny. I believe, I can't even see it, but the note, I believe it's note number, is there a way of zooming? There we go.
No, I know it.
Under general notes, note number 7, if you look at where I'm kind of putting my cursor, it notes that the entire site is located in Zone X, and it's outside of the 0.2% annual chance of floodplain. So I believe the 100 years would be 1% even, so this is outside of what would be even 0.2.
But stream floods, so I don't believe that is the misunderstanding. But any stream that has a stream is 50 feet is consumed floodway on any stream in Pennsylvania that doesn't have a delineated floodplain. So it could require a permit. It may not require a permit because they may think it doesn't diminish the cross-section of the stream. But it would be a hazard to the stream for catching debris and stuff coming down and shifting more water up to the roadway.
We would look into that, and we'd be happy to,
Please.
condition, if there was relief granted, to make sure that this was, placed, and we even, could site place with someone the fence, you know, if it needed to be pushed back a little bit further off of where it exactly is, to avoid that particular concern. I'm sure that they would be
Okay.
fully willing to work with.
Yeah, I'll look at it tomorrow too, but the issue is how the gate is going to be put on. Is there going to be pillars?
My installation calls for it to be on a 4-inch steel post.
It's going to be just a 4-inch post as opposed to big pillars like at other places. And the gate across the driveway is still going to only be 4 feet too?
Yes.
Also on the plan, it references on Exhibit A7, it talks about a 6-foot high aluminum. Where is that going to be located?
6-foot-high aluminum is coming on, if you're looking at the plan we're looking at now. So the neighbor to this,
Hold on, I can move us to the, oh, here we go.
right here. So it's highlighted in yellow. It has a 75-foot setback off the center of the street.
Okay, so it's along the property line as opposed to on any of the street frontages other
Yes,
than
yeah.
maybe a
The side property.
portion of it near the road. Okay. As for the hedges, one of the reasons that we like to have open fences is that we can see through them, and fences sometimes hedges are more of a security risk in a lot of places because you can't see from the road what's going on at the house. There could be somebody up there doing loading vehicles, and you couldn't even see them because you have a 6-foot hedge. So I'm not a proponent of the hedges, even though that's a workaround that a lot of people use. But so that's a concern I have. Now, as for the autistic child, I can venture with that too. I don't know how that applies because he's not there the whole time, but I have a grandson like that as well. And then as soon as he finds an open door, he heads out to the street or traffic, and you have to be watching constantly, and it is a problem. So I can sympathize with that as well. That's all I have.
Jessica?
The water course was present when they purchased the house, correct?
Yes.
So they knew that it was an issue when the house was bought? Or they bought the house knowing that there was a water feature?
Yes, all of that, the fact that it's a corner lot and all of these things, yes, were there. You know, they didn't build this home, or, you know, they bought the property as is.
And you've mentioned multiple times that putting a fence in that complies with the regulations of the code, the zoning code, would inhibit their use of the property. Based on A7, it does look like there's a significant rear yard and side yard that would be enclosed with a fence, including what appears to be a flagstone patio in the rear that opens into a significant green space. And, you know, they are adults who could go through the fence and use the rest of the open space of the yard, and they are the primary residents, so I'm not sure how their use of the yard is inhibited by this fence complying with the zoning code.
Well, if it perfectly complies here, it actually would bisect their actual driveway.
Sure,
So
if you built-
they would need, you know, they would need relief regardless to have any kind of front yard fence here. So I think that, you know, the goal would be to fence around the area that, again, is used area, you know, outside area.
But there
they're
is a way
using.
to install a fence that does not follow the front yard setback that would comply with the zoning code, correct?
Oh, no, I don't know that you can install a fence through their driveway, and that would inhibit their ability to drive in their driveway.
But if you installed the fence from the corner of the house that faces Cambridge to the rear, and then from the corner of the garage following the driveway up to the front yard setback, and then to the adjacent property line, that's a significant amount of the yard that would be fenced in by right.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I followed where you were talking about. I just want to make sure
So the corner
that
of the
I'm.
house that faces Cambridge,
Yep,
you could install a fence adjacent with that face of the house to the rear
well,
by right. And then,
where it's proposed, because that's by right, right? because that's a side yard, or that would be the secondary frontage.
There is no secondary frontage, correct, Kelly?
Right, so in R1 and R1A, they don't differentiate a secondary front yard from the primary front yard.
But so they're allowing, but the code states that you're allowed to have one primary and one secondary. So are you now saying that they're not allowed to have, utilize or designate one of the yards as a side yard?
Right, because
At
there's
all?
only one front yard designation in R1 and R1A.
Now I'm confused.
Yeah,
Let's
my
take-
understanding is
Let's
that
take a 5-minute recess. Could you please come back there? Bring the-
And we're on.
Okay. Julie, I understand you want to request the continuance
yes, that is correct.
to our November 3rd.
That would be great. Thank you.
I'm not going to call for a board vote or anything. We're just going to continue the case to our November 3rd hearing.
The only question I would have is, you willing to waive any applicable MPC or zoning ordinance time requirements for the board to render a decision so that we can relist it for November 3rd?
For this, for during this time period, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So, you guys want to do a decision in that other case now? With respect to case Z 22-25, Michael and Teresa Brown, owners of 305 Windsor Park Lane. I won't read the rest of the description into the record. Someone specifically requested I do so. Jessica, are you prepared to vote?
I am.
Ed, are you prepared to vote?
Yes.
Bill? Jesse?
Yes.
And so am I. Jesse, would you please take that decision?
Yes, with regards to case Z 22-25, I would vote to approve the requested relief with the following conditions. Number one, that the porch, roof, and garage front wall shall be flush and extend no further than 9 foot 6 inches from the front of the existing house. Number two, that the proposed porch shall not be enclosed. Number three, the garage shall comply with the side yard setback. Number four, utilities on the front porch shall be limited to electricity only. Number five, the project will be completed within 1 year. And number six, in accordance with the notes of testimony.
Jessica?
I would vote to deny the application.
Ed?
I would vote against.
Bill?
I agree with the motion.
Oh my God, a split vote. I agree also. That application is approved with those conditions, 3-2. Any other business? No? With that, we are adjourned.